Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So I've got my cup of tea, very wobbly cup of tea, in a thermal mug because today I wanted to really get into it. So on this channel you'll know that I do talk a lot about handmade and creative business owners. I talk about Shopify, I talk about Etsy, all very much like strategic based things. But today I wanted to do something a little bit different, and this is a video that I wanted to make for a couple of months now, and I guess I was just gathering my thoughts. I think I was just gathering up all the things that I kind of wanted to say. So if you don't know, back in May I turned 30, so I'm officially in my 30s, which I don't know how I feel about that. And I just feel that having started my business when I was 24, I believe, and started businesses way back when I was like five years old, 6 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old. If you read my book, I'll pop a little thingamabob in here so you can see what it looks like. But the book it does go really in depth into that. And I just really wanted to share like some life and business lessons that I'd learned from my 20s. I guess I'm kind of hoping that it's going to help some of you guys out there, even if you're not in your 20s or you're in your teens or you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s. I feel like listening to someone else's experiences can always be a very cathartic and helpful exercise, even if you're like, I'm not in that age group, Age to me is a very arbitrary number. It doesn't really matter to me. Like, I don't look at someone and think, oh, they're 40, oh, they're 50, oh, they're like 18. It doesn't really matter to me. So I know the title of this is very much like lessons I learned in my 20s, but for me it's more of like a life marker rather than like an age group you have to go through or like a transition thing. So I guess like we're just gonna get straight into it. So for me, the first thing is that lean into what feels good, and don't punish yourself. So for me, I think that we spend so much of our lives trying to, and especially when we're young, we want to be that Cosmo girl. We want to be that Gary V or that business owner. We want to be Sarah Blakely. We want to be these things. And we push and we pull and we mold and we restrain ourselves and we put ourselves into these horrifically awful boxes, and we don't lean into what feels good. We don't allow ourselves to let life be easy. Like, for example, a lot of people get called lazy. Like, oh, you are just lazy. You're a lazy person. Look at you laid out on the couch. Like, what are you doing with your day? Why are you not doing this? And I'm like, so when did that become a bad thing? I did not get the memo. And I just feel like we go against our own personality traits. We go against who we are as human beings. And we just end up trying to force ourselves into boxes that do not need us to be in them, And I honestly feel like a lot of unhappiness in my 20s was because I was trying to be this person that I was not meant to be, and that's okay. Why can we not just appreciate the likes of Gary V and Sarah Blakely and those Cosmo girls? Like, why can we not just look at them and say, that's cool, but I don't want that for me, So I feel just like leaning into what feels good for me. Like, my life is all around leaning into what feels good. I have gone through, like, personally, a bit of a transition over the last, I want to say 6 months. Basically from when I turned 30, around that time until now, like, has been a massive life overhaul internally, not so much externally. But you guys might have noticed that I've kind of changed the way I look. Like, you go back onto some of my old videos and you'll see that I had my eyelashes done, I had my nails done, I had my hair done up to the nines. And that was me trying to push myself and put myself in someone else's box. I was trying to become this person that I was not supposed to be, and I was trying to be like, I've got my face on camera, I need to be always wearing makeup, always having good lashes, always having my eyebrows done, and and now I'm just like, it's just not me. So yeah, I mean, that's just one thing, but yeah, so leaning into what feels good is a really important part of life, because so much of the time what feels good to us is our intuition giving us a sign and saying, you know what, like, this is you do you, this is what you're meant to do. So yeah, I just think that sometimes we stop ourselves from leaning into what feels good because we think it's not what people would want from us. We think that, and this is not stuff that is obvious to us at the time, we think we want to be really uber productive and put our aches and pains and whatever aside and just do the thing, like do the workout, do the day's work, list all the listings, do all the things. And sometimes, like, it takes for us to burn out a few times before we are in tune with who we are and what we actually want. So that is kind of lesson one. Lean into what feels good, and it's fine as long as you're not hurting anyone. It really doesn't matter. If you're the kind of person that likes to sit in their pants and rest a beer on their belly and watch like The Simpsons for 16 hours straight, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, that would be my biggest lesson one. Lesson two is that you will pivot and you will change. I'm someone that likes a system. I like to have things in a box. I like to know who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm good at. And for me, pivots like throw that completely out of whack. So, when I started to say to people, and it came very slowly, but for Handmade Bosses, I was always just the Etsy girl, the Etsy girl, the Etsy girl, the Etsy girl. And for the longest time, I was like, I'm more than that though. Like, I'm a handmade business expert. I know I'm a creative business expert. You could even say I'm a small business expert. And so I'm starting to gradually transition from just being all about Etsy. And I still love Etsy. I think Etsy is amazing. And if you don't, that is fine, because as it happens, I also love Shopify and I also love Amazon and I also love all these things. But for me, you have to just get okay and get used to the fact that pivots are normal and pivots are going to happen whether you like them or not. And if you ignore them and ignore them and ignore them, they will just shout louder. Like your gut, your intuition, your guidance system, whatever you want to call it, will just shout louder until you listen. And that could take years, it could take months, it could take weeks. But if you have as much of an inkling as to this doesn't feel right, I feel like my business is disjointed, I feel like I'm not vibing with it, there's something there. And it could be that you're carving out your own niche. It could be that, some people will say you can't have a niche where you sell lampshades that are made out of, toilet paper. I don't know, or bath bombs for dogs. Some people might be like, that's really stupid, but if it lights you up and it makes you happy, just go for it. The best business decisions I've ever seen or made myself have always come from a place of, what, that's crazy, we can't do that, or I can't do that. And then as it turns out, it's actually been like an amazing thing to do. So lesson two is pivots are completely normal. Pivots are good. Pivots are going to happen whether you like it or not. And I say that with the utmost love, but they are going to happen. The third thing is beware of, I put negative people, but I really feel like the wrong people is probably the better word to use, because we are going to be thrown into the midst of the wrong people, negative people, whatever you want to kind of call them. And I had this experience, especially this last kind of year or so. My friendship circle expanded a lot, and then all of a sudden things happened and it just shrunk. And at the time I was like, oh, what is going on? But it was almost like this universal kind of, it sounds awful, but this universal cull. And it doesn't mean that you don't like that person. It doesn't mean that you don't wish them like well in life. It just means that you're both not aligned, and that's okay. And I had to get pretty good at just letting things roll the way they were meant to roll. And that could mean not responding to messages. It could mean just being okay with not having that person in your life. And I'm sure you guys are watching this right now, and you might have someone in your life that you're like, yeah, I've had this inkling for a while, but I don't know how to let it go. And it could be like a gradual thing. It could be like you don't phone them twice a week. Instead, you phone them once a week, or once a month, or once every few months. And then like naturally it will start to stop. But I really started to take on board that you are the average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. And don't get me wrong, like I'm still in a transition phase with this, but I've let go people in my life that a year ago, 2 years ago, I was super close to. And it is letting go. It is just unclenching and just allowing those people to flourish into who they want to be. Because also as well, like with close friendships or even family, like there is that pressure to always be together. You know, you've been friends since you were 5. You've been friends since you were like at school. But the bottom line here is that if you're trying to force something or make something good, it's not going to be, and it's not meant to be, and that's fine. And I always feel like people come into our life for a reason or a season. And sometimes it can just be a season of your life that you needed that person to be there, or you needed that, you know, kick up the butt or that truth bomb to come into your life. So it is true what they say, that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And really take that on board, guys, because if you are hanging around people, spending time with people that you look at and go, oh God, you're moaning again, or you're so negative, or why are you so judgmental, or, you know, why do you treat people like that? Chances are that you are going to reflect some element of that. So just be really, really aware of that. The 4th lesson is to not force yourself into other people's boxes. I probably spent the majority of my 20s doing that exact thing. I was always like the person who figured it out. And for me, something that I did, and it might be reflected in you guys as well. So I'm sharing some like personal stuff, but I'm doing it because I want you to maybe just take a look at your own life. And if it doesn't resonate, that is fine. Maybe just listen, and just maybe you might have something to share with other people in your life that might be going through the same thing. But for me, like, I had a lot of friends a year or so ago, and I say a year or so ago, I still have really good friends and I love them, and all the people in my life are people that I love dearly. But before that, I had a lot of people that I would see, that I would voice note, that I would talk to. And I found myself like having to put different faces on for different people. So one person might be all about the banter and all about the laughs, and I would make myself an extrovert. I would make myself be funny. I would make myself the clown to make sure that everyone had a good time and jolly everybody along. And the other thing would be like, if I was seeing someone who was quiet and reserved, I would mirror that and be quiet and reserved. Where in actual fact, I'm not either one of those things. I'm someone who I mean, why do we even have to say who we are? Why can't we just wake up one day and be like, today I'm going to be this person, tomorrow I'm going to be that person? That's the other thing as well. Like, why do we have to label ourselves and be like, that's our label for the rest of our lives? Like, when I was 21, I was loud and life and soul. Now I've kind of mellowed a little bit. I can still get a little bit rowdy at times, but do you know what I mean? I just think that sometimes you force yourself into other people's boxes, and that can be parents, that can be loved ones, it can be friends, it can be all these different things, which also really does come up as feeling anxious, and that is something, you know, I've been doing therapy for years now. I had like a long break from it. I've recently gone back to it, and my therapist is amazing. She's so good. She's so like, rather than treating the anxiety and putting a band-aid over it and being like, here, have this stuff and do this meds, or I don't, you know, instead she's like, right, let's get to the root cause. And I'm still exploring, I'm still trying to like find out what that is. But for me, it was a real big trend was trying to put myself in other people's boxes, having the perceived representation of success. Like a lot of the times when people do build a business that gets really, really successful, there is that element of, now what do I do now? And that's something with Handmade Bosses that we had. I spent 3 years of my life building this, and now it's at the point where I'm like, it's doing really well without me having to have my fingers spinning all the plates all the time. And there is that element of, what now? Like what's next for Steph, and I just think that having that outward representation of success can be, when you get there, you can quite quickly find that actually this was never my box, that this was never my version of success, this was someone else's. And this was something that I had for a long time, is that I thought, when I make it, when I get there, I'm going to have this and I'm going to do this and this is going to be my life. And then I got those things, I did those things, and I was like, wow, this feels empty, this doesn't feel good. Like a good example, and this does actually lead me neatly onto thing 5, which is spend money on stuff that adds value to your life. I think we all have this, because it's not accessible to us, not always. We always think that when we get to the 6-figure business or the £1 million business, that we are going to have that luxury car, we're going to have that massive 5-bedroom house near the beach, we are going to have that Louis Vuitton bag, we're going to get the Gucci belt, we're going to do all these things. And I think that for so long and for so many years, that is the kind of marker of success for a lot of people. And again, this was something for me, like, for the longest time, that was my marker, and it was even on my dream board. I had my bag, I had my watch, I had the belt, I had the outfits, I had the car, I had the house. And I actually did all of those things in quite a short space of time. So I bought the Gucci belt, I went to Louis Vuitton and bought the bag, I bought the car, I did all of these things, and this has all been in the past year. And actually, it did not feel good. It really did not feel good. And I honestly thought that, it would be the thing that would make me happy. And when I got there, it would be like this, like, angel light would come beaming down from the sky, and it would be like this moment. And it wasn't. It really wasn't. It really, really was not great. So spend money on stuff that adds value. And I don't care if it's like buying vintage Pokemon cards. I don't care if it's buying like computer bits. It doesn't matter what it is that you spend money on, again, as long as you're not hurting anybody. But it's got to add value for you and your life. So for me, like, I went from spending money on Gucci purses and Prada handbags to buying like crystals and like fun little Buddha bits, and really embracing that side of me that had been like shut down for so long. And that adds value. It's not a massive expense, but it adds value. And now I'll drop money on a really good meal because I love food, and I don't care anymore. Like, I don't care if I'm meant to be a girl and I'm not supposed to love food. Like, it doesn't matter. I really like food. I love getting my fingers dirty and just getting into a meal. I just don't care. I don't care what people think anymore. So yeah, I really, and that's something that I wanted you guys to kind of know, that when you get to that level of success, because again, on this channel, we talk a lot about building a business and getting there and getting to that dream level. I don't want you guys to feel ridiculously empty when you do get there, because sometimes it can really feel like that. It can really feel like you worked so hard and there is this emptiness and a sense of, now what? So yeah, just look at your dream board lists, look at your must-haves, look at all these things that you want to do when you make it, when you get there, and be like, is this a version of my own success picture, or is this someone else's? Like, is this on my dream board, or is this on my list because of me, or is it because of something I value, or is it because of I need to show this to other people in order for me to feel like a success? And I'm a bit ashamed to say that the reason I bought the bags was because I wanted everybody to see, look, I've got this like designer bag. And I you know, I can't speak for anyone else who buys designer bags, but I think quite a lot of people that buy things like that are doing it because they want people to see and know that that's who they are. And while that's fine, if it brings you true happiness and it makes you feel fulfilled, for me and for a lot of people, it might not. So just consider that.
Bosses, we've been having some really great conversations in today's video. However, I'm here to tell you about this. This is called your conversion rate, and I've actually made for you in the description box below a free 90-minute conversion rate masterclass. So I'm just going to quickly explain to you in 1 minute why this is important. Okay. So this is your Etsy shop and these are your customers. So let's say that you get 100 customers into your store and you have a 1% conversion rate. That means you get one sale, and roughly that's going to be about $30 to £30. But what happens when we increase that conversion rate to 2%, 3% and above? This suddenly doubles, triples, quadruples without you having to change anything. Now, getting customers into your store costs time, effort, and money. But what if you didn't have to change this, you didn't have to change your shop, all you had to change was this conversion rate? That is what I'm going to be teaching you in today's masterclass. So whether you're a newbie or a seasoned Etsy shop owner, get yourself down below and register for that masterclass so you can increase this number. Back to the video.
The sixth thing, I think, is if you're upset or triggered by something that you see on the internet, that you see on your social media feeds, explore it. And that is interesting. See, what tends to happen, and something that I've discovered through creating mindset programs and talking one-to-one with a lot of business owners and going through years of therapy myself and reading psychoanalytical books and all of that type of thing, is that if you're triggered or you get upset or angry or have some kind of reaction to something you've seen, you need to explore it because there's something in that. There's always this golden nugget of truth that's buried within there. And for me, like, for example, when I used to see other coaches like being really pushy, and even in my field as well, like, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like the only person in my field, because I'm not. But when I saw people in that field, like charging a lot of money for programs that don't really teach you anything, I got really mad, like really mad. You'll even see like in some of the videos that I post that I would actually like say, oh God, like I've seen this thing and it gets me so mad. But the thing was that there was some nugget in there. There was something in there that was triggering me. And the thing that was because I felt like I had been conned by people, not those people, but by people in my field. I felt like I'd been preyed upon. I felt like there had been some tactics like pushed onto me that I didn't like. And I was getting angry, not at necessarily these people, but at the people that had done it to me. So yeah, always explore things. Like, no matter how like controversial you think it is, it's always a good idea to just explore it and just see why it triggers you, and if there's anything in there that you need to kind of explore, talk about, journal about. Journaling, by the way, guys, absolutely life changing. Like, seriously, if you feel like you have no one in your life that you can talk to about certain things, you need a pen, you need a good journal, and you just need to just go to town on that thing. Because seriously, like, journaling, I think, has been the biggest thing that has really helped me and allowed me to kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say bare my soul because that sounds really cringe, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's just allowed me to put myself onto a page and for me to read that back and say, that is me there on that page. Whereas you don't always get that when you're talking to people and like in your daily life, you know, you don't always show your innermost self. The other thing as well is if something doesn't feel exciting to you, do not do it. I made this mistake a couple of times over the past year. I had projects that I had put a lot of time into, a lot of energy into, and that I got to D-Day, I got to the time where it had to be launched, it had to be done, and I just wasn't excited. And I went ahead and did it anyway. And it always has come back to bite me in the ass. Always. And it does link me on to my next point, but this whole sunk cost analogy thing is so bad. Like, honestly, there is going to be that time. And something that I do now is that if I've got an idea for a project, I will just let it sit, and I'll put the idea, I'll write it down, and I'll just let it sit. And if I go back a month, 2 months, 3 months later, and I'm like, it was okay, I'm not really that excited about it, then I just don't do it. But that's not to say that you never have to do it ever again, because sometimes you're not excited by something in one stage of life, in another you would be. So for example, me making a make a mindset program like 2 years ago would be like, no, I'm not really feeling it. But when I released it, I was thinking, yeah, that's really, really good. So if something that doesn't feel exciting to you, it doesn't matter how much time and effort and money you've put into it, just shelve it for now, because you will regret it if you do a half-ass launch of something, or you put something out there that you've not put your all into, rather than just shelving it, upsetting a couple of people, and just moving on with life and coming back to it at a different time. And again, like, sunk cost analogy is so bad. Like, don't ever feel you have to go through with something just because you've put a lot of time and effort into it, because I've done that and I've really come to like regret it. The next thing is that hustle culture is killing entrepreneurs, and this is something that I feel really strongly about. But in every book from like 2018 onwards, there's always been some element of hustle harder, put more hours in, put more money in, and it's just this more. It's like a spoiled child being like, I want more. And like, this hustle culture, and you'll see it around like a lot of, I want to say, bro marketers, like, but you'll see it a lot. And I don't think we start businesses. There's a saying, actually, and I can't think of how it goes or who said it, but it's like, entrepreneurs are the only people that will give up working 40 hours a week to work 80 hours a week for themselves. Like, it is the most bizarre thing. And I've been there, done that. I've burnt out. I've had the operation because I've burnt out and I've not been looking after myself. Like, believe me, I've been down that rabbit hole, and it's not a good place to be. Hustle culture is where you just need to work harder. You just need to have more control. You just need to put more effort in, or do more of the right things in order to get the result that you want. And although, yes, there is some element of, you need to put some time aside, you need to put some money into it, and you need to really like work just a little bit harder. Hustle is a completely different level. Hustle is constant. It's 24 hours a day. It's 3 hours sleep, not brushing your teeth until 5 p.m. You know, it's yeah, it is really bad. And the amount of entrepreneurs that are now, a couple of years later, having to take years off of their business, having to go into like 100 grand's worth of debt, having to do all these things for a business that they don't even really love anymore, because they've burnt themselves out so much that they've grown to hate it. It's really bad. It's not good. There are a few like names I could name drop. I'm not going to, but I think you kind of know the people who I mean. It's the people who are just work harder. And if it doesn't feel good to you, just don't do it. The next thing is, your body will always know. Again, this does kind of lean into what feels good, but your body will always know. So something that I have really struggled with my entire life is my weight. And again, like, trigger warning, whatever warning, I will be talking about like diets and body like mass index and all that kind of stuff. So if you don't want to like listen to this, just skip ahead a bit. But for me, I've always struggled with my weight. I've been really tiny, I've been really big, I've been a medium, I've been, whatever words you want to use it, I've been this end of the spectrum, I've been that end of the spectrum. And one thing that I have now given up is that I practice something called intuitive eating. There's loads of books on it, like really, really good books. But like, I've just given up this whole diet culture. And even recently, you'll go back and watch some of my lives and I'll be like, I'm walking on my walk pad, I'm trying to lose some weight, and that's great. And I think sometimes it can be the words we use, the word diet, it makes anyone go, ooh. But for me, like my body is a instrument, not an ornament, and that's something that I heard out of one of these books. But that really hit home, because I was like, wow, okay, my body is not meant to be an ornament. It's not meant to be something that people pick and poke and go, oh, look at this, and oh, that's nice. And that's not what your body is. Your body is there to keep you alive, keep you healthy, and allow you to live the best life that you want to. And if that means sitting down on a Saturday, evening, I was about to say morning, but evening, and devour a bag of Doritos with dunking cheese, you know what I mean? It's just, as long as you're not hurting anyone and you're doing it in the best way you can, I just think that, especially as entrepreneurs as well, we do have this way about us of not looking after ourselves when we're hustling hard. Yeah, I really let that go over the past. It's only I'm very early. It's only been a couple of months. But for me, like, I've already like seen my skin stabilize. My anxiety has dropped. I've just felt so much better because I'm eating what my body is craving. I'm eating what my body wants. And I'm stopping when my body doesn't want it anymore. It doesn't matter if I spend £20 on a meal. If I eat a couple of bites and I'm like, I'm done, I'm not going to force it. I'm not, so your body will always know. And I think that sometimes, well, not even sometimes, I think a lot of the time we do disconnect from ourselves, and we disconnect from our bodies, and we disconnect from who we are and what feels good to us, and what our body wants, and what our body needs, and what our brain is telling us, and all these things. And instead we just go into a like autopilot, and we push and we pull, and we and your body will always know. And I don't know who needs to hear it. I don't know what it means to you. It could mean diet, it could mean aches and pains, it could mean hustle culture. I don't know who needs to hear it, but I think someone watching this really does need to hear it, that your body will know. And you might be pushing yourself into a really dark place, and just revisit it. Just ask yourself the question, like, is this for my highest good? Is this something that I really want to do, The next one is love yourself always. So I know I feel like every high school poster ever, but before you can do a lot of good things in the world, and I don't mean, like you can't be a person until you do this, but for me, I didn't step into the amount of good that I could do in this world before I loved myself. And I know what you're gonna say. I know that sounds ridiculous and so incredibly fluffy, but there was a time where I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, and if I had no clothes on, like, I could not look at myself in the mirror. I would avoid mirrors. Like hotel room bathrooms for me was an absolute nightmare. I hated it. Now I'm just like, I've got wobbly bits just like anybody else, but I don't care, because my body is doing what it needs to do, and it allows me to sit here now and talk to you guys and teach people. And you know what I mean? I just think that when you can love yourself, and an exercise that I do, which might be helpful for you guys, is that I start from my head and I go all the way down to my toes, and I say something that I love about each part. So like my head, I'll be like, I like my eyes, or my like chest area, I'll say I like my boobs. Or like your hands, or do you know what I mean? So, and I do that every single night before I go to sleep. So just learn to start off small, learn to love a little bit of yourself, learn to love one thing, and the next day list 2 things, and then the next day list 3 things. And before you know it, you'll be going the whole day without like putting yourself down and just berating yourself. And you know, when you do this kind of stuff and you do talk down to yourself, you do start to kill your own self-confidence, which affects your life, it affects your business, it affects how you show up in the world. It is a real big deal. It's not just, oh, love yourself, Steph, that sounds nice. It is a real big deal, really. If you're constantly talking to yourself like crap, how can you expect your beautiful brain to show up with all these amazing creations that you're meant to make? Like, no wonder you feel disjointed. It's because you're putting yourself down of every minute of every day. It could be the way you look. It could be the way you walk. It could be the way you talk. Do you know what I mean? It's so easy for people to say, oh yeah, Steph, but you don't have this, or yeah, Steph, but you don't do this, and you don't, you know, but we all have our things. If I gave you a list of all the things I used to hate about myself, it would be very long. But to be frank, now I'm just grateful to have what I have and what I am. And if I have something that someone else doesn't, or I don't have something that someone else has, that's okay. That's just what it's meant to do, you know. The very last thing, and this has been a monster video, guys, and thank you so much for watching all the way through. This has been like a little podcast type, you know, video. But the very last thing is don't go backwards. It can be so tempting at times, can't it, to when something fails, or, you know, we talked a lot about the sunk costs, and we talked a lot about, you know, if we don't feel good about something and we don't want to do it, it can be so easy in situations like that where we give up on something that we thought was driving us forward to go backwards. And one thing I want you guys to take going backwards out, because you're never going backwards. You're always, even if you give up on a project, that is a step forward, because now and it's kind of like leans into learning lessons from everything, but you don't ever go backwards. You always go forward. You're always moving ahead. It might not feel like that at the time, and it might actually feel really, really bad at the time, and you might think, oh, you know, I didn't want to do this, but you're never going backwards. You're always leaping, stepping stoning your way to a better place. And I think the more that you can do it from a place of love and lean into what feels good and trust your intuition, and build a business, because after all, that's what we talk a lot about on this channel, build a business that really complements your life. And I guess that's another point as well, is that you're not building a business like just to make money. You're building a business that will ultimately become a very integral part of the life you want to lead. You don't live to work, you work to live. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Is that even right? You live to work. Basically, you want to build a life that your business slots into. You don't want to like build a business that your life slots into. Does that make sense? So yes, I would say that succinctly, these are all the, I think, 12 business and life lessons that I've learned. If this was interesting to you guys, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment, like what was your biggest life lesson, and what was your biggest aha from this video. I really, really hope that you've enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a bit of a different one for me, so I really hope that it was useful, and I hope that you guys got something out of it. And let me know, like, what lesson do you think you still have to learn? What's the one thing that you are taking away from this? That would be really useful for me to hear, and also it will kind of make me want to do stuff like this again and have a little chit chat with my cup of tea, which is now very cold, but I'll still drink it anyway, because why not? That feels good to me. I'm gonna drink cold tea live on camera. Hang on. That feels good to me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye everyone.